This may be the toughest video I ever have to make. Not because it's a hot take or anything, but because I'm British, and I'll be respecting and showing admiration to the French. This would normally get me locked up in the Tower of London, or sent to a remote island since I'm so big, but I'm willing to risk it because this game rules. I think it's fair to say that the video game industry is in a tumultuous place right now. Sure, we've had some breakout games over the last few years, such as Baldur's Gate 3 and Astrobot, but for every Elden Ring, we get a Concord. For every Balatro, we get a Suicide Squad. And for every Stardew Valley, we get a CEO laying off over 200 employees while bragging about his classic car collection. With development costs rising and the price of video games going up every time we blink, video game publishers are always looking for easy ways to make money, and the current money-making trend is the live service game. Live service games are games that effectively have no end, like the never-ending abyss we're all slowly falling into. Developers release the game, usually as a free-to-play title, and then continuously add content to the game via free updates, keeping the player base engaged while also adding paid content such as cosmetics to provide a constant revenue stream. This style of game exploded in popularity thanks to Fortnite, but because of Fortnite's success, video game publishers decided they needed to get in on the action, so live service games flooded the market for a few years. And while some have found success, such as Sea of Thieves and Genshin Impact, it's safe to say a majority of these games were dead on arrival, mainly due to a lack of content at launch, or the gameplay being unoriginal with little else to make the game stand out. So, why am I talking about live service games exactly? Well, I feel it's played no small part in my slowly growing distaste of video games in general. Yes, I mentioned a bunch of amazing games at the start of this video, and I know there's a whole slew of indie games that are stellar, but it feels like every other day I'm reading an article about mass layoffs because a live service game flopped, only for yet another live service game to be announced mere days after. Some of these live service games would have performed so much better if they were just traditional games, like the Avengers game published by Square Enix a few years back, so it's disheartening to see hard-working developers be punished because of the publisher's negligence and greed. With all that being said, I do still find enjoyment in video games, and I do look forward to seeing what sort of worlds these talented developers can create, and one particular title announced in 2024 caught my eye. Clair Obscur Expedition 33 was announced during the 2024 Xbox Games Showcase, and it immediately stood out thanks to its stylish visual design, the hint of real-time elements in a turn-based RPG, and an intriguing narrative hook. The gameplay shown reminded me of Lost Odyssey, and it was quite nice to see a game harken back to the days where Xbox tried in vain to woo the Japanese market, before giving up on that idea, trying again many years later, before just giving up in general. Also, with games such as the Persona series and the more recent Yakuza / Like a Dragon titles getting me hooked into turn-based RPGs, this new game seemed right up my alley. Expedition 33 was being developed by a brand new dev team based out of France called Sandfall Interactive. Sandfall was comprised of about 30 people, with quite a few of those people being ex-Ubisoft employees, including the CEO, Guillaume Broche, who left Ubisoft to form Sandfall due to his desire to create high-fidelity RPGs, and after securing funding from the publisher Kepler Interactive. Expedition 33 was the team's very first game, and using Unreal Engine 5, the game was scheduled for a 2025 release on PS5, Xbox Series X/S, and PC, with the game also being a Day 1 addition to Xbox Game Pass. Over the next few months, more details about the game were revealed, including the game's voice cast, with some heavy hitters being involved, such as Daredevil's Charlie Cox playing Gustav, Ben Starr, known for playing Clive in Final Fantasy XVI playing Verso, and Andy Serkis playing Renoir. The devs also reminded everyone that they're French by releasing a trailer revealing the French voice cast, with all the characters wearing stereotypical French outfits, naming it the Baguette trailer. It might just possibly be the greatest video game trailer ever created, but that's just my opinion. In January 2025, we got a proper deep dive into Expedition 33 thanks to Xbox's Developer Direct stream, and we also got a release date, April 24th, 2025, which meant we only had 3 months to wait to try this game for ourselves. The gameplay shown during the Developer Direct stream made me more excited for this game, especially since I had a growing interest in story-driven turn-based RPGs, as I mentioned earlier. The visual style and soundtrack also added to my excitement, and the fact that it was only $50 compared to the industry standard $70 was certainly a nice bonus. And don't get me started on how it's $80 now, hell. As the days counted down, I expected Expedition 33 to review pretty well. Everything about it was appealing to me, but I knew it wasn't going to appeal to everyone, and I felt that would be shown in its average review score. To add to that, 2025 had already seen some fantastic games being released, such as Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, Split Fiction, Monster Hunter Wilds, and Blue Prince. So with Expedition 33 being Sandfall's very first title, and with it looking so ambitious, I expected some cracks to show through in the final product, so I anticipated a Metacritic score of about 80 to 85. And then, the reviews dropped. Holy shit. This small development team, making their first game together, not only have met expectations, but completely smashed them. Sandfall have introduced themselves to the world in the best way possible, by not only releasing a Game of the Year contender on their very first attempt, but as of the time of recording, have the highest rated game of 2025 so far. Praise was being given to pretty much all aspects of the game, from the gameplay itself, to the visuals, story and soundtrack. Critics adored this game, and when the game released, the public perception was very much the same, with the game having one of, if not the highest user scores on Metacritic with a 9.7 out of 10. So with everyone singing this game's praises, I was more excited than ever to try this game out, but I still kept some reservations. I have been burned before with games I looked forward to that ended up being underwhelming, such as Destiny and Mass Effect Andromeda. Nonetheless, I began streaming Expedition 33 over on my Twitch channel the day after its release. And now, over 60 hours later, and having earned all the game's 55 achievements, I can officially say that this game deserves all the praise it's getting and more. But not only that, it's achieved something that very few games have done for me. It made me enjoy video games again. Let's start by talking about the game's premise. Clair Obscur Expedition 33 takes place in a fantasy world on a piece of land simply called the Continent. Our journey begins in a town called Lumiere, which was torn apart by an event called a fracture. After the fracture, a being known simply as the Paintress appears and begins painting a number on her monolith. This number, which decreases every year, makes everyone of that age or older vanish out of existence. This annual event is known as the Gamage, and we start the story on the day that this Gamage is to take place. We are introduced to Matt Murdock, Gustav and Maëlle, two of the main protagonists, as well as Sophie, Gustav's former love interest. Sophie is turning 33, but since it's the day of the Gamage and the number on the monolith is to go down from 34 to 33, Sophie knows her time is short. As such, controlling Sophie as she talks to Lumiere's residents, inspects perfectly normal trash cans, and listens to a couple getting it on before their eventual demise, gives us a rather bleak introduction into the game's world. But it's an intro that's done to near perfection, with the residents of Lumiere still being able to look on the positive side and celebrate the lives of those who will soon be taken from them. We also get to fight a mime, accompanied by what is perhaps the most French music I have ever heard in any video game, but god it's so good. Still, even with the celebrations and the silliness of having to fight a mime, we all know what's coming. We watch hopelessly as the Paintress paints the number 33 on her monolith, and see Sophie, as well as many of Lumiere's residents, vanish out of existence. It's a powerful scene which really gets you hooked on the game's narrative. You want to find a way to stop the Paintress of unleashing her brush of death among these poor people, which is how we learn of the expeditions. Once a year, after the Gamage, an expedition is sent to the mainland with one mission, to take down the Paintress and stop the cycle. Starting with Expedition 0, these expeditions have since corresponded with the number on the Paintress's monolith. Thus, this latest expedition is known as Expedition 33. Usually, these expeditions consist of people who have only 1 year left to live before they fall to the Gamage, such as Gustav and Expedition 33's resident mage, Lune. However, Maëlle, despite being much younger than those around her, joins Expedition 33 as she wants to see the world beyond Lumiere. With everything set, Expedition 33 sets off towards the mainland, where the game truly begins. With the premise set, it's time to talk about the gameplay itself. The game features a wide variety of locales spread across the continent, and one thing that stands out is just how vibrant, stylish and unique these locales are. No locale feels the same as a previous one, and it's almost as if each area you come across feels like a work of art which has been painted into existence. You can see how the land has still been ravaged by the fracture, and you can find yourself just standing there, appreciating each backdrop you encounter along your adventure. Kinda like what they do in every trailer ever, but this time it's warranted, I promise. The enemies you encounter, called Nevrons, also follow the painted design of each world, with each Nevron feeling right at home while also feeling unique. It's also nice that even though they're monsters, they don't look ugly as most enemies considered monsters may be. In combat, each Nevron has its own series of attacks, which is important once I discuss the battle system in a little bit. These locales are all connected by an overworld you can traverse. While you're initially limited to just running across the overworld, you soon meet another character, Esquier, who serves as your main mode of transportation across the open world, initially through breaking certain obstacles to access new areas, but as the story progresses, you gain the ability to swim and eventually fly across the world, seeing everything it has to offer. Of course, the main component of the gameplay in Expedition 33 is its battle system. The core turn-based elements are still there, with you deciding what attack, skill or item you want to use for your turn, and your enemies following suit. Each character also has a firearm, which you can use freely during your turn to shoot at enemies, particularly their weak points. Using this firearm, as well as the skills, cost AP, or action points, with each shot of the firearm costing 1 AP, and each skill having a different AP requirement. What sets Expedition 33 apart is what lies beyond its turn-based core. When using a skill, you're presented with a set of quick-time events, which when hit, provide bonuses such as increased damage output or greater healing. When it comes to the enemy's turn, you have the ability to dodge their attacks, which can reduce the damage you take significantly, or, if you're feeling skilled enough, parry the incoming attacks. If you manage to parry every attack in an enemy's turn, you perform a counter-attack, dealing even more damage to the enemy on their own turn. There are also certain attacks where you have to jump to avoid them, with an ability to counter-attack also being present. Each character also has a unique battle mechanic. For example, Gustav has an overcharge ability, which gains strength the more you attack and use skills. When the ability is fully charged, Gustav can use the overcharge skill to deal massive damage to the enemy. Mael has the ability to switch stances, with each providing certain buffs to attack or defense, and Lune can produce stains when using her skills, which can be spent to enhance her skills even further later on during battle. Later on, you also unlock gradient skills and gradient counters. Gradient skills are much more powerful abilities that each character can perform. However, to use these skills, you have to fill up the gradient bar, which you do by using normal skills. The higher the AP cost for the skill, the faster the gradient bar fills. The gradient bar is shared between your party members, so every party member can fill up the bar, but only one party member can use the gradient skill once the bar is filled. The bar can be filled up to 3 times, with different levels of gradient attacks costing more of the bar to use. As for gradient counters, they work in a similar manner to parrying, with the difference being that there's a visual cue for when an enemy is performing their gradient attack. Hitting the gradient counter button at the correct time has the character parry and counter the gradient attack, dealing damage to the enemy. Outside of battle, you can unlock and apply skills for each character via skill points you earn for leveling up. Leveling up also allows you to raise the attributes of each character, increasing their strength, ability, defense, etc. These attributes are tied to the weapon each character has equipped, with each weapon providing certain buffs and abilities, with more unlocked as the weapon is upgraded. Each character can also equip 3 Pictos, which provide further abilities and buffs. However, once you win 4 battles having a certain Picto equipped, you unlock the Picto as a Lumina ability, allowing you to spend Lumina points to equip the ability as a passive buff across all your characters while still being able to use other Pictos. You can increase the amount of Lumina points each character has by finding colours of Lumina spread across the game world. What makes this whole gameplay loop so engaging and satisfying is that at its core, it seems very simple. However, with the ability to parry, dodge and counter attacks, and being able to build your characters in a multitude of ways, it adds a lot of depth, and no 2 playthroughs end up being the same, with the ability to respec your characters in a way you find comfortable. For example, with the right Pictos and skills, Lune can either be a massive DPS character, or you can make her the ultimate support. The game gives you the freedom to play and build your characters as you want without too much compromise, and nails the feeling of your party gaining strength as you continue the story. Also, being able to land a multitude of parries and performing a counterattack never gets old. The only slight criticism I can give to the battle system is that the parry system is not very forgiving and requires quite precise timing. With certain hardware setups, the output delay on a monitor may prove critical between landing a parry or taking damage, which may prove to be frustrating. Of course, for those who have struggles parrying, you can still dodge attacks which have a wider timing window, and there is always the option to lower the difficulty, increasing the timing window for when you can land parries. As you progress through the story, you'll come across a multitude of characters who may or may not end up joining your party. These characters include Ciel, a scythe-wielding warrior who tries to remain positive despite the overwhelming odds, Verso, who shares similar goals to the expedition despite harbouring many secrets, Minoko, a member of a race of creatures called Gestrals, who has the ability to transform into certain Nevrons by collecting their feet. Makes me wonder if someone on the dev team has a foot fetish. And then there's Renoir, a mysterious man you keep meeting on your adventure, who was the commander of Expedition Zero, and who claims to be immortal. There's also Esquier, who I mentioned earlier as being your main form of transportation across the open world, and oh my god, he is the most precious being. I love him so much, and I will protect him with my life. I swear to god, if anything bad happens to him, I will do things I can't say on YouTube because I'll get demonetized.
I too am, but I'm also wee, so the wee balances the.
You can interact with your other party members when you set up camp, which I highly recommend doing, as not only do you gain relationship levels and unlock new gradient attacks, but you also learn a lot about each party member, and each conversation adds so much depth to characters that already were interesting and engaging to begin with. You also get some humorous dialogue sprinkled in, which is nice.
Now come over here and let's snuggle.
Oh hell yeah! Little spoon! You know what?
Little spoon. Obviously.
Yes! Yes! Speaking of humour, it's quite amazing how despite the serious, engaging and gripping story, the developers managed to sprinkle not only some light-hearted moments in the plot that feel natural, but included some comedic battles and dialogue, and even referenced a widely known internet meme. I did not expect a "This is fine" reference in this game, but there it is! They actually did it, the mad lads! On top of fighting the mime in Lumiere, you can also find other mimes located around the game world, and defeating them unlocks different cosmetics for each character, including the baguette outfits. You thought the baguettes were only for that trailer? Nope, they're actually unlockable in this game, and I heard through the grapevine that in New Game Plus, there's a baguette weapon you can equip that instantly kills you at the beginning of a battle. The paintress won't know what hit her. There's one aspect of the game I haven't mentioned, and that is the audio aspect. The voice acting here is top notch, with Charlie Cox pretty much nailing his first video game role as Gustav. Ben Starr is a delight and is fully establishing himself as a prominent voice actor after his breakthrough role in Final Fantasy XVI, and Andy Serkis is still a legend as always. Kirsty Ryder and Charlotte Nix give their all bringing Lune and Ciel to life, Rich Keeble does a splendid job portraying the headstrong and humorous Minoko, and Maxence Cazorla is always a delight to listen to as the lovable bean Esquier. However, I think special props should be given to Jennifer English for her portrayal of Maëlle. Voicing a young character in such a dark and grim story can go one of two ways, but I think Jennifer nails it, giving life to a character that is surrounded by death, but knows what she signed up for and knows what is at stake. I was enthralled by everyone's performances here, but Jennifer's one in particular stood out to me. And then there's the soundtrack. Oh my god, the soundtrack. The soundtrack is primarily composed by Laurent Testard, in his first role composing a soundtrack for any form of media, let alone a video game. He was found by Sandfall after the studio discovered his SoundCloud page via a post on a gaming forum, and oh boy did Laurent understand the assignment immediately. Because not only does the soundtrack for Expedition 33 have a strong case for being the best video game soundtrack this year, but I feel it has a strong case of being the best video game soundtrack in the last decade. Like seriously, take a listen to some of these tracks, they're absolutely jaw-dropping.
Clair obscur, trouble de rature, trouvera effet. Clair obscur, bordé aux peintures, trouvera sans elle. Clair obscur, trouble de rature, trouvera effet. Clair obscur, bordé aux peintures, trouvera sans elle.
the game itself doesn't appeal to you, I urge you to listen to the soundtrack. It's available in its entirety on YouTube and Spotify, and it even topped Billboard's classical album chart and cracked the top 40 on the UK's official album download chart. That alone should sell you on the quality of this game's soundtrack, and I really hope more dev studios hire Lorien to compose their soundtracks because he has made one hell of a first impression. If there's one more nitpick I have to talk about in this otherwise phenomenal game, it would be the movement and traversal aspects. If you stick to the main story content, it's not an issue at all, as there's really nothing that tests your platforming skills. It's only when you get to some of the side content that the issues become apparent. Jumping can feel clunky at times, and movement can feel a little stiff, especially when it comes to some of the side content that requires precise platforming. There's a set of minigames located on gestural beaches, with one requiring you to climb an extremely tall tower littered with random objects, in a similar vein to Getting Over It and Only Up, if you remember that. You may have seen streamers rage and struggle with this minigame in particular, and yes, it does show the flaws with the movement mechanics, although certain interviews with the devs may have implied it was a deliberate decision. However, for me personally, I didn't really find it all that difficult, but maybe it's because I'm just a platforming god. I did get all the achievements in Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy, you know. There's a lot more I can gush over about this game, including its side content and optional bosses, but I don't want to delve too far into spoiler territory, so I'll wrap it up by answering the burning question. Why did Clair Obscur Expedition 33 make me enjoy video games again? I think it's because it made me realise that a lot of game developers still have fascinating ideas and stories to tell, and you know they really want to create immersive and groundbreaking games that raise the bar for other developers to chase with their own projects. Sadly, a lot of publishers only seem to worry about chasing trends and getting their developers to create games that cash in on these trends without asking what the developers really want to make. As I mentioned earlier, a sizable amount of the Sandfall development team were ex-Ubisoft employees, and I guarantee that Ubisoft would not have allowed this sort of game to be developed under their watch. Guillaume and his team broke away from the corporate suits to see their vision come to life, and I hope it inspires more developers to pursue their dream games and take risks instead of making generic extraction shooter number 1532. Clair Obscur Expedition 33 is a triumph in an industry that desperately needs more of it, but more than that, it exposes the biggest problem in the industry today: the suits running these AAA gaming companies and their inability to grasp what video games should be truly about. Immersing yourself in a world lovingly crafted by those with passion for what they do. Clair Obscur Expedition 33 is available on PS5, Xbox Series X/S and PC through Steam and the Epic Games Store, and is also available on Xbox Game Pass. Please give this game a shot because I feel we need more games like it. You could say that the French cooked, and this time, it wasn't baguettes.